A-hole stepfather got rid of all of my prized possessions as a child and beat the crap out of me regularly. I ended up getting all of his prized possessions and selling most of them, and when I told him, he tried to assault me in public, which resulted in criminal charges, losing his job, and his house. Now I get to see him all the time and rub his nose in it. So I was 15 when my mom decided to start dating this guy, Jason, from some sketchy dating site. I didn't like him from the moment I met him. Something about him just screamed fake. You know when you meet someone and they're just trying too hard? That was Jason. But, I figured it wouldn't last long, and whatever. I could just ignore him, right? Well, 2 months later, the guy moves in. Just like that. I didn't even have a say. My mom, Anna, didn't ask me if I was cool with it or if I had any feelings about it. Nope. One day, he was just there with his ugly plaid suitcase sitting in the living room like it owned the place. It was like he brought his bad energy with him. I tried to keep my head down and stay out of his way. Maybe he'd leave me alone if I wasn't a problem. Spoiler alert. That didn't work. About 3 weeks after he moved in, I came home from school to find that everything I cared about was gone. I'm talking about everything. My skateboards, my BMX bike, the half pipe I built myself, all my ice hockey gear. All of it. Gone. At first, I thought maybe they'd been stolen or something, but nope. Turns out Jason decided to take it all to the dump while I was at school. When I confronted him, he didn't even try to hide it. He just looked at me with this smug look and said, "I didn't want all your crap cluttering up my garage." Excuse me? His garage? The guy had been living with us for, like 5 minutes? And now everything was his? I was so angry I couldn't even talk. My mom just stood there. She didn't even back me up. I remember her saying, "Just let it go, honey. It's just stuff." Just stuff. Sure, I didn't need that skateboard or that BMX bike to survive, but it wasn't about the stuff. It was about the fact that Jason just came into my life, uninvited, and started throwing things away like I didn't matter. Anyway, I tried to suck it up. I told myself, okay, maybe that's the worst of it. Maybe this guy is just a neat freak or something. Boy, was I wrong. About 2 months after that, we were having dinner. It was some boring weeknight meal, nothing special. I got up to grab something from the fridge, and Jason snapped at me. "You didn't ask to be excused." I shrugged and said, "I didn't know I had to." Before I could even blink, the guy punches me square in the stomach. It wasn't some light slap or shove either. This was a full-on punch, like he was trying to knock the wind out of me. And it worked. I doubled over, gasping for air, completely stunned. I mean, what kind of grown man punches a 15-year-old? A total psycho, that's who. I looked over at my mom, thinking she'd say something, anything, but she just sat there. She didn't even flinch. She didn't even tell Jason to calm down. I was on my own. I could feel my whole world starting to collapse right there. My mom wasn't going to help me. She was too wrapped up in Jason to care about what he was doing to me. After that, things just got worse. It was like Jason had figured out he could do whatever he wanted, and I couldn't do a thing about it. He was obsessed with the idea that I was a lazy, worthless nerd. I had a solid collection of comics and Pokemon cards, and a stack of fantasy and sci-fi books. I spent a lot of time reading and playing video games on my PS2. I guess that made me a target for him. One day, I came home to find that all of it was gone. My entire collection of comics and Pokemon cards? Gone. My PS2 and all the games? Gone. He'd tossed everything. I stormed into the kitchen ready to blow up at him, but before I could even get a word out, he gave me that same smug grin. Boys your age should be out playing football, not sitting around playing video games like some fey asterisk got nerd. I'll never forget how that made me feel. It wasn't even just about the stuff. It was about him taking away the things that made me, me. He was trying to erase who I was, and my mom, she let him. She even agreed with him half the time, saying I should be spending more time outside like normal kids. Normal. As if playing video games and reading comics made me less of a person. And the thing is, Jason wasn't some random unemployed loser. He was a middle school teacher. Yeah, he spent his days teaching kids and refereeing sports games in his free time, acting like he cared about them. But behind closed doors, he was this cruel, controlling asshole who made my life a living hell. The worst part was when he started controlling my money. My mom used to give me lunch money every week, so I could at least eat something during school. Jason decided I didn't deserve lunch money anymore because apparently I'd just spend it on gay shit like comics and video games. I was a kid. I needed to eat, and now I couldn't even afford a slice of pizza. So one day, I did what any starving 15-year-old would do. I took a few bucks from his stupid change jar. It wasn't even a lot, just enough for a slice of pizza and a soda. But of course, my twin sister Kelly, who loved causing drama, told Jason what I'd done. I thought he'd maybe yell at me, ground me or something, but nope. He called the cops. Jason actually called the police on me for taking like $3 out of his change jar. When they showed up, I was in total shock. I couldn't believe it. Jason pressed charges for larceny, over $3. The cops didn't even take it seriously, but Jason insisted. They took me down to the station, and when I came home, Jason was waiting. He didn't waste any time. The second I walked through the door, he beat the crap out of me. I remember lying in my room later that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking, is this it? Is this my life now? The next morning, I ran away. I didn't even have a plan. I just grabbed my backpack, stuffed it with some clothes, and took off. I couldn't stay in that house for one more second. But of course, the cops found me and brought me back. And the first thing Jason did? He started working on my mom, trying to convince her to send me away to some military school or boot camp. Anything to get me out of the house. By the time I turned 16, I had been in and out of juvie because of that larceny charge. I spent my 16th birthday behind bars, all because Jason was determined to ruin my life. Looking back, I don't even know how I survived it all. I was trapped, stuck in this house with a guy who hated me, and a mom who didn't care enough to stop him. I felt like I had no one in my corner. And the worst part was, I wasn't sure if it would ever end. Alright, so after the whole mess with Jason taking my stuff and calling the cops over a few bucks, things didn't get better. In fact, they got way worse. Jason seemed to take some kind of sick joy in making my life hell. It was like he was constantly coming up with new ways to screw with me. And the worst part? My mom, Anna, let him. She didn't even try to stop it. She acted like it wasn't happening, or worse, like it was my fault for not just doing what Jason wanted. After the police incident, Jason stopped pretending to be the nice guy in front of my mom. I mean, he didn't hit me when she was around. He wasn't that dumb. But he made sure to show me exactly where I stood in the house. If I said anything he didn't like, he'd give me this look like, you better watch it. And it wasn't just looks either. He started making these ridiculous rules, like I had to ask for permission to do anything. Get up from the table, use the bathroom, go to my room. If I didn't ask, there'd be consequences. One night, I was in my room, minding my own business, just trying to do my homework. It wasn't even that late, maybe like 9 p.m. Jason comes barging in without knocking, like he owned the place. He starts yelling at me about how I didn't do my chores that day. I explained I was working on a school project, and I'd get to them after. Apparently that was the wrong answer. Next thing I know, he's dragging me out of my chair by the back of my shirt, yelling about how lazy I am. He slammed me into the wall so hard my shoulder cracked against it. The whole time he was telling me how I'd never amount to anything, how I was worthless. And again, where was my mom? In the living room, watching TV, acting like everything was totally fine. Afterward, when I told her what happened, she just said, "You really need to stop provoking Jason." Provoking? Right, like it was my fault he was a complete psycho. A couple weeks later, things escalated again. Jason had this thing where he hated seeing me enjoy anything. Like, if I was playing a game or reading a book, that was a problem for him. He wanted me to be working, cleaning, or doing whatever he thought was manly. So one Saturday, I was sitting in the living room playing a video game. Nothing crazy, just trying to relax. Jason comes storming in from outside, covered in sweat from working on his stupid woodworking project. He sees me, and I swear his face turns red. "Get up," he growls. I look up confused. "What?" I said, "Get up, go mow the lawn, now!" It was literally 2 p.m. and it was over 90 degrees outside. I hadn't even finished the game I was playing. So I said, "I'll do it after dinner. It's too hot right now." Big mistake. Jason lunges at me, yanks the controller out of my hands, and throws it across the room. It hits the wall and shatters into pieces. Before I can even react, he grabs me by the collar and pulls me out of the chair. This time, he's not just angry, he's furious. "Do it now, or you'll be sorry," he hisses in my face. At this point, I knew better than to argue. I grabbed the mower and went outside, feeling the heat slam into me like a wall. I spent the next 2 hours mowing the lawn under the blazing sun, drenched in sweat. By the time I finished, I was so exhausted I could barely stand. Jason didn't care. He came outside, inspected my work, and then had the nerve to point out spots I missed. He made me go back and fix them, even though I could barely see straight. When I finally went back inside, my mom was at the kitchen table, reading a magazine. She looked up, saw me covered in sweat and dirt, and said, "You know, if you just did what Jason asked the first time, this wouldn't happen." That was the moment I realized something. My mom wasn't going to help me. She wasn't on my side. No matter what Jason did, she was always going to take his side. I was completely alone. The next few months were just one long nightmare. Jason kept finding new ways to make my life miserable. He'd barge into my room at random times, demanding I do chores or accusing me of slacking off. He threw out more of my stuff, including my favorite jacket that my grandma had given me before she passed. When I confronted him about it, he just shrugged and said, "It was ugly anyway." It wasn't just physical stuff he took, though. He took away any sense of safety I had in my own home. I was constantly on edge, always waiting for the next time he'd snap. I barely slept because I was afraid he'd come into my room in the middle of the night. I started flinching anytime someone raised their voice around me, even at school. Speaking of school, things weren't much better there. I used to be a decent student, nothing special, but I got by. But with everything going on at home, my grades started slipping. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I'd sit in class just staring at the clock, counting down the minutes until I had to go back home to Jason. My teachers noticed, but none of them ever asked me what was going on. And honestly, even if they had, I wouldn't have known what to say. What could I say? My stepdad's a psychopath and my mom doesn't care? Yeah, like that would help. The only person who seemed to get it was my best friend, Ryan. He knew something was up, but I never told him the whole story. I didn't want anyone to know how bad it really was. But he could tell. One day after school, he caught up with me and asked, "Dude, are you okay? You haven't been yourself lately." I shrugged it off like I always did. "Just dealing with some stuff at home," I said. Ryan gave me this look like he didn't believe me, but he didn't push it. "Well, if you ever need to talk, you know where to find me." I nodded, but in my head I was thinking, what's the point? Talking won't change anything. Around this time, Jason's discipline got more public. He started tearing into me in front of my mom's friends, in front of the neighbors, anyone who would listen. He'd humiliate me, call me lazy and weak. One time, in front of a whole group of people, he told them I was never going to be a real man because I couldn't handle his tough love. Everyone just laughed. No one thought to ask if maybe, just maybe, Jason was going too far. My mom, of course, stood right next to him, nodding along like she agreed with every word. I think that's when I started to feel something shift in me. I was angry, so angry, but I didn't know what to do with that anger. It wasn't just about Jason anymore. It was about my mom, too. She let this happen. She let him do this to me. She wasn't just a bystander, she was part of the problem. And that realization, it made everything worse. But as much as I hated both of them, I felt trapped. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. I didn't even have money for lunch most days, let alone a way to escape. So I stayed. I stayed, and I survived. Barely. So, by the time I was 16, things were bad. Like, really bad. Jason wasn't even trying to pretend like he cared about me anymore. It was all about control, about breaking me down until there was nothing left. But the thing is, I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of knowing he had me beat, even if I was starting to feel like I couldn't take it anymore. One day, things hit a new low. It was a Friday afternoon, and I'd just gotten back from school. I was exhausted because Jason had kept me up half the night with his random chores. Seriously, he'd make me mop the kitchen floor at 2 a.m. just because he felt like it. Anyway, I get home, and the first thing I notice is that something's off. The whole house feels empty. It's hard to explain, but you know when you can just tell something is wrong? Yeah, that feeling. I go into the kitchen and Jason's there, sitting at the table with this weird smirk on his face. I hated that smirk. Every time he smiled like that, I knew it meant he was about to pull something messed up. My mom wasn't home, which wasn't that unusual, but still, it felt weird. Jason was just sitting there, tapping his fingers on the table, like he was waiting for something. "Hey, Mike," he says, still smirking. "Guess what I found in your room?" Immediately my stomach dropped. I had no idea what he was talking about, but I knew it wasn't good. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, don't play dumb with me," he says, standing up and walking toward me. He gets real close, too close, like he's trying to intimidate me. "I found your stash." Now I was seriously confused. Stash? What stash? I didn't keep anything in my room besides my school stuff, and honestly, what was even left for him to take? He'd already thrown out everything I cared about. "What stash?" I asked, taking a step back, even though I didn't want to show him I was scared. "Your drugs," he says, like it's the most obvious thing in the world. "Found them hidden under your mattress." I stared at him, totally shocked. "I don't do drugs," I said, completely baffled. I wasn't that kind of kid. I never even drank or smoked. But Jason? He was standing there, acting like he'd just busted me for some major crime. "Don't lie to me," he shouts, his face turning red. He pulls out this little baggie from his pocket. It had some random pills in it. I had never seen them in my life. "Where the hell did you get that?" I asked. now more confused than anything. That's not mine! Jason just shakes his head like he doesn't believe a word I'm saying. You've really done it this time, he says, pacing around the kitchen like he's working himself up. I'm calling your mom. We're sending you away. That's when it hit me. This was his plan. He was trying to frame me. He wanted me gone, and this was how he was going to do it. I couldn't believe it. I knew Jason hated me, but this was a new level of messed up. Before I could even think of how to respond, he picks up the phone and calls my mom. I stood there, completely helpless, while he told her he'd found drugs in my room and that I'd been hiding them for months. My mom, without even asking me if it was true, believed him. Of course, she did. I should have expected it, but it still hurt like hell to hear her say, "We need to do something about him, Jason. Maybe we should look into that military school you mentioned." Military school. This guy was literally framing me so he could ship me off to military school and get rid of me for good. I lost it. I absolutely snapped. I started yelling, telling him he was lying, that the pills weren't mine, that I wasn't going anywhere. But Jason didn't care. He just stood there, grinning like he'd won. And my mom? She just stayed on the phone, agreeing with him like she always did. I knew I had to get out of there. If I stayed, he was going to ruin my life. So I did what I thought was my only option. I ran away, again. But this time, I wasn't just running because I needed space. I was running because I couldn't live in that house anymore. I couldn't take another minute of Jason's abuse, and I couldn't handle my mom's constant betrayal. She wasn't just standing by and letting it happen. She was helping him. I grabbed my backpack, stuffed it with whatever clothes I could find, and left. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anywhere to go. I just ran. I was on the streets for a couple of days, sleeping in the park and trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. I thought about going to Ryan's house, but I didn't want to drag him into my mess. Plus, his parents were super strict, and I didn't want them to think I was a bad influence or anything. So I just wandered around, trying to stay out of sight and avoid anyone who might recognize me. But of course, I couldn't run forever. On the third day, the cops found me. They picked me up and took me straight back to Jason and my mom. When I walked in the door, Jason was sitting there with that same damn smirk on his face, like he was happy to see me get dragged back. He didn't even wait for the cops to leave before he started laying into me. "You think you can just run away and everything will be fine?" he sneered, pacing around me like a predator. "You're going to military school, Mike. There's no way out of this." I looked over at my mom, hoping she'd maybe, just this once, stand up for me. But no, she just stood there, arms crossed, nodding along with everything Jason said. She was completely on his side again. It was like I didn't even exist to her anymore. At that point, I'd had enough. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry. I just stared at them, this hollow feeling settling in my chest. I didn't say a word as Jason kept yelling, telling me how much of a failure I was, how I was never going to amount to anything. It was like I'd become numb to it all. But deep down, something was changing. I wasn't scared of him anymore. I wasn't going to let him control me. And I sure as hell wasn't going to military school. I just didn't know how to stop it yet. When the police left, Jason walked over to me, got right in my face and whispered, "This is the end for you, Mike. I'll make sure of it." That was the moment I realized I had to fight back. I didn't know how, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going down without a fight. Not anymore. By the time I was 18, I'd finally gotten out of that house. After running away a couple more times, my mom and Jason decided military school wasn't worth the trouble. Maybe they didn't want to pay for it, or maybe they just got sick of dealing with me. Either way, I was done. I graduated high school, packed my bags, and left as soon as I could. I didn't care where I went, as long as it wasn't under Jason's roof. At first, I didn't look back. I didn't call my mom, didn't visit, didn't even drive through the neighborhood. I was done with both of them. For a couple of years, I focused on getting my life together. I got a job, started lifting weights, and made sure I never had to rely on anyone like Jason ever again. I guess you could say I got stronger, not just physically, but mentally too. I wasn't that scared kid anymore. Jason had no power over me, at least not like he used to. But here's the thing. The past doesn't just disappear. It sits there, waiting for you, whether you want to deal with it or not. And for me, it all came rushing back when I heard my mom was sick. It started with a random call from my aunt. We weren't super close, but she was the only family member who didn't totally buy into Jason's BS. She told me my mom had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and she didn't have much time left. I didn't know how to feel about it. I mean, yeah, she was my mom, but after everything that had happened, part of me felt like she wasn't really my mom anymore. Jason had taken her away from me, turned her into someone I barely recognized. Still, I decided to visit. Not for her, really, but for me. I needed some kind of closure, even if I didn't know what that meant at the time. When I showed up at the house, it was like stepping into a time machine. Everything looked exactly the same. The worn-out couch, the old TV in the corner, the ugly curtains Jason had insisted on. The only thing that had changed was my mom. She looked small, frail, the kind of person who could barely stand, let alone fight back. I guess the cancer had taken its toll. Jason was there, of course, hovering over her like he was her protector or something. It made me sick just looking at him. But he didn't scare me anymore. He couldn't. I was bigger now, stronger, and I knew it. He couldn't intimidate me like he did when I was 15. My mom tried to talk, but it was mostly Jason doing the talking for her. He went on about how he'd been taking care of her, how hard it was, how much money it was costing. All I could think about was how fake it all sounded. I knew Jason didn't care about my mom. He cared about the money, about the house, about his stupid woodworking projects. He was the same manipulative jerk he'd always been. After a while, my mom pulled me aside. She was struggling to get the words out, but she told me something that surprised me. She said she was leaving Jason. She didn't want to spend the rest of her life with him, not after everything he'd done. I couldn't believe it. For years, she'd sided with him, let him control everything. But now, when she had barely any time left, she was finally standing up for herself. Turns out she had already seen a lawyer and had a separation agreement in place. Jason would get a set amount of money, and he'd have 45 days to pack his crap and leave the house. She even bought back his childhood home from the bank when he had to sell it to pay off his debts years ago. Now he'd be moving back in there. Good riddance, right? It didn't take long after that for my mom to pass away. I had mixed feelings, honestly. I was sad, sure, but there was this other part of me. This part that was just angry. Angry at her for not leaving Jason sooner. Angry at Jason for ruining so much of my childhood. And angry at myself for not doing more to stop it. But then, things started to get interesting. See, my mom had let Jason come back and get his stuff, but he was dragging his feet. He thought he could keep coming and going like he owned the place. But the separation agreement had a deadline, and he was past it. Legally, everything left in the house was mine now. So I did what any normal person would do. I sold it. All of it. Every last piece of Jason's precious junk. First up was his baseball card collection. I'd overheard him bragging about how much it was worth over the years, and I knew it would sell fast. I got about $14,000 for it. Next, I sold all his autographed sports memorabilia, around $11,000. I wasn't done yet, though. Jason was obsessed with woodworking, so I sold his equipment and a few pieces of furniture he'd made. That brought in another $6,500. But I kept some of the good stuff. He had this coin collection, and guess what? I also collect coins. I took the best pieces for myself, along with a few tools and some random odds and ends. Oh, and I also kept his mother's engagement ring, a platinum band with 3 diamonds. I figured it was worth a lot, but honestly, I kept it just because I knew it would piss him off. And man, did it piss him off. About a month later, I ran into Jason at the grocery store. He was loading his car when I walked up to him. I didn't even hesitate. I told him straight to his face that I'd sold all his stuff. His reaction? Exactly what I'd hoped for. He snapped. The guy couldn't control himself. He swung at me, but he wasn't the same Jason anymore. He was old, weak. I dodged his punches easily, and the ones that did connect barely even hurt. Meanwhile, I had my phone out, ready to call the cops. He kept swinging, kept yelling, kept losing it. Even as I talked to the 911 operator. The best part? He started ramming his shopping cart into my car, thinking that would get me to back off. By the time the police showed up, he was red-faced, out of breath, and looking like an idiot. They arrested him right there in the parking lot. Assault, communicating threats, destruction of property, the works. And you know what the best part is? That wasn't the end of it. Jason lost his job at the middle school because of the charges. He lost his pension. The guy couldn't catch a break, and for once, I didn't feel bad about it. He ended up having to sell his mother's house just to pay for the expensive lawyer he'd hired, thinking he could somehow beat the charges. Spoiler alert, he didn't. So after Jason's little meltdown at the grocery store, you'd think he'd finally get the message that he couldn't mess with me anymore. But of course the guy was too stubborn, or maybe too stupid, to just let it go. I mean, he already lost everything. His job, his money, his house, but somehow he still thought he could win. That's the thing about people like Jason. They always think they're invincible, even when everything around them is falling apart. Anyway, after his arrest, word spread fast. My nephew Tyler, who was on the football team, made sure everyone at school knew that Jason had been arrested for assaulting me. It didn't take long for other parents to get wind of it, and a bunch of them started calling the school, demanding that Jason step down from his refereeing gigs. The dude was a middle school ref, for crying out loud, and now people knew he was a bully. No way he was going to keep that job. Turns out, he didn't even get the chance to step down. He was basically fired from that too. No one wanted him near their kids anymore. Not after what he did to me. I'll admit, it felt pretty damn good to see him lose everything he'd built up. It wasn't just about the money or the stuff. It was about the fact that he no longer had power over anyone, especially me. But it gets better. Remember how I told you Jason had to sell his mom's house to pay for the lawyer he couldn't afford? Well, apparently he didn't get nearly as much for the house as he thought he would. He ended up in this crappy little trailer park on the edge of town, living in a trailer that looked like it was about to fall apart at any second. And the best part? He had to take a job as a cashier at Walmart just to make ends meet. You can imagine how much I loved that. Here was the guy who used to act like he was better than me, who thought he was smarter, tougher, whatever. And now? Now he was ringing up people's groceries at Walmart, barely making enough to pay his rent. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The first time I went to Walmart after finding out where he worked, I purposely stood in line longer than I needed to. I waited until his line was free, even though there were open registers right next to him. I wanted him to see me, to know I wasn't just going to disappear from his life. The look on his face when I stepped up to the counter was priceless. He looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and die. "Hey, Jason," I said, all casual, like nothing had ever happened between us. "How's it going?" He didn't say a word. He just started scanning my groceries, his hands shaking a little. I could see the rage building up behind his eyes, but he couldn't do anything about it. Not anymore. As he scanned the last item, I made a point of handing him exact change, real slow, like I was enjoying every second of it. "Oh, wait," I said, pulling a rare coin from my pocket, one that I'd taken from his coin collection. "Didn't realize I had this. Guess I'll use my credit card instead." The way his face twisted in anger, it was almost enough to make me laugh out loud. But I kept my cool. I didn't need to say much. Just being there, making him ring up my stuff, was enough. But that wasn't the last time I saw him. Every time I needed something from Walmart, I made sure to go to that same store, wait in that same line. Every time, I'd make some little comment that I knew would dig under his skin. Like the time I bought a brand new above-ground pool for my daughter. I knew Jason loved those ratcheting wrenches he used to have, so as he scanned the pool, I said, "You know, I just sold those wrenches you loved. Figured I'd use the money to buy this pool. My daughter's gonna love it." He didn't respond, but I could tell he was fuming. He was stuck there, working a dead-end job, while I was out there living my life, doing just fine. It was the ultimate karma, and I loved every second of it. And yeah, maybe it sounds petty, but after everything Jason had put me through, I didn't care. This guy had tried to ruin my life. He'd taken my stuff, beat me, humiliated me, and even tried to send me away. He'd called the cops on me, framed me for something I didn't do, and made my teenage years a living hell. He deserved every bit of misery he was getting now. But it wasn't just about revenge. It was about closure. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had control. Jason couldn't hurt me anymore. He couldn't take anything away from me. In fact, he was the one losing everything now, and I was the one who got to walk away, head held high. The final nail in the coffin came a few weeks later. My niece Emma, who went to the same middle school where Jason used to work, told me that he'd come back to the school to get his stuff after losing his job. Apparently, he made this huge scene in the middle of the hallway, yelling at the principal and crying about how unfair it all was. The kids who were there for summer school saw the whole thing. Emma said it was the most embarrassing thing she'd ever seen. I couldn't help but laugh when she told me. Jason had spent his entire life trying to be the big man, the one in control, and now he was nothing. Just some washed-up guy who couldn't even hold it together in front of a bunch of middle schoolers. After that, I didn't see much of Jason. I still went to Walmart from time to time, but I didn't need to rub it in anymore. I'd gotten what I wanted. Jason's life was ruined, and mine was just beginning.